Okie doke, we'll get started. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the September listening sessions for the California Truth and Healing Council. We're adjusting our listening schedule moving forward, and we'll have general listening sessions today, and then Wednesday from 6 to 7:30 p.m., as well as our regular business meeting of the council on Friday at 1 p.m., with public comments starting promptly at 3. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians and the Tribal Advisor for Governor Gavin Newsom. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the land I'm joining you from is the homelands of the Patwin peoples. I'm now going to briefly walk through some of the logistics for today's session. First, we are recording this listening session, and it's available for public participation via Zoom and dial-in. The recording and summary notes will be available on the CTHC landing page and the blog when they are ready. For those interested in following the council, including ongoing updates, listening sessions, recordings, and the listening session summary documents that I mentioned, those are available at the California Truth and Healing Council updates blog at catruthandhealing.com. You can also get updates for events by following the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Additional details, including meeting dates, agendas, and background information, are available at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. If you've not already done so, we'd appreciate if you could update your name to let us know who you are. We're going to start with brief introductions of those of you who have joined us. And then, as always, we'll dive into a quick overview to get everyone up to speed on recent updates. And then we'll go into the listening and discussion portion of today's convening. If you'd like to speak at any point in time, you can raise your hand and I can call on you. If you're using the Zoom app, you should be able to raise your hand using app controls, but you can also use Alt-Y in Windows or Option-Y on Mac to raise and lower your hand. If you've dialed in, you should be able to raise your hand by pressing *9. You may also email written comments to info@catruthandhealing.com at your convenience. You can always put anything in the chat, and then you can always just unmute your line if you have anything you'd like to say. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind participants that all of our council members, council staff, and many of you are members of the victim population in need of collective healing. So I ask that you engage with the council, our office, and each other with respect and with your whole heart in a healing mindset. Many of us doing this work are navigating systems that were not built for us to make change that was never contemplated. This in itself takes an enormous amount of patience and emotional integrity, and we're all doing our best to make strides in these spaces. So thank you again for joining us. And now I'll have Councilmember Lucas, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the group. You don't have to, though. Unsafe words.
No, I will. I'm happy to. I'm Carmen Lucas, Quime Indian from the Laguna Band of Mission Indians in San Diego, California. I'm very humbled and happy to be here and look forward to hearing what people have to say. But now that I'm speaking, I don't want to pass up an opportunity to pay homage to Astro Webb. She was a wonderful lady, one of the finest people I've met, who was a volunteer for San Diego, our California State Parks stewardships on our archaeological sites out there. Her and her husband, Sam Webb, did a lot of photographing, documenting our prehistory. I understand she passed away Saturday morning. I'm saddened to hear that, but I do want to pay acknowledge to her, because we often get wrapped up in our own since whatever that fancy word is, where we think we're the only people in the world, and we're not. We have a lot of other cultures who truly care about our culture and do a very good job of helping us to record it and pay homage to it. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Council Member. Loretta, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Loretta Miranda, and I am Chief Deputy Tribal Advisor and Special Counsel for the Governor's Office. I'm a descendant of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. I'm Serrano and Cupeño, and I'm happy to see you all here and looking forward to the discussion.
And we also have Michael Park on from our office. If anyone has any requests to follow up directly with us or with any of the council members, you can always reach out to Michael and chat with him directly. Now we'll give all of you a moment to introduce yourselves to the group if you'd like. You can introduce as much as you like or as little as you like. So if you'd like to, please feel free to go on cam and introduce yourself at this time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katarina Friesen, and I'm here representing various, some different faith communities and organizations. I'm on Yokut's territory in Fresno, California, and I'm just here to listen and learn as someone from a white settler background. Thank you.
Great, welcome.
Hello, my name is Whitlow. I'm in Southern Pomo, Wapo, Coast Miwok lands. I work in a school, so that's why I'm wearing a mask and I'll be muted and off camera just so it's not distracting. Very honored to be here and be in community with you all. Representative of Humboldt State University's Indigenous and Rural Social Work Program. And I also work and support our Indigenous students here at Santa Rosa City Schools. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you and welcome.
Hi, I'm Gary Rickard, Chairman of the Two Tribe in Northern California.
Welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chairman Jack Potter of Redding Rancheria of Wintu Indians. I just want to acknowledge that I'm so grateful of the state of California, creating this to create healing for the Native people because of all the atrocities that has happened in the past and, not so recently in the, 60s and 70s, things were still happening to our people. A lot of our people go without federal recognition and stuff, and it has a lot to do with, the local governments, the county governments, and stuff based on the original governor, Peter Burnett. And so I'm so grateful to have this forum.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is well. My name is Victoria Wang from the California Department of Justice. I assist Mary Lopez Kiefer, who is the director of the Native Office of the Native American Affairs. I'm here to listen and learn. I just want to thank you, the council, for having me and providing this space.
Welcome. It looks like some people are struggling a bit with mute and not mute. So we'll give it a couple minutes still. We can hear you now.
Oh, I'm Michael Madraga, a disenrolled person from Bachunga. I'm grateful that maybe we get a voice to be heard through this.
Welcome. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Shirley Laus, Trinidad Rancheria. I'm the Governmental Affairs Coordinator.
Welcome, Shirley. It's been a long time. It's good to hear your voice. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves to the group? Teddy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you keep going off mute, so I feel like maybe you do. Okay. Anyone else at this time? And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like as well. As we move forward in this conversation, we will have a presentation, so you don't need to be on cam, but as we move into discussion, it would be helpful if people could go on cam, just so that everybody can be in this space together and we can see who we're talking to as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the updates on the council. And as we do every month, we'll give you an overview of what the council is, what it does, what its scope is, and then we'll go through some of the updates in preparation for this Friday's meeting. If you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to put them in the chat or to raise your hand or to go off mute and to just ask the question. And we're happy to clarify any of the points that we make today. And if I'm talking too fast, also feel free to tell me to slow down a bit. And I will start sharing my screen now. Okay. Loretta, are you seeing that in the right view?
Yep, it looks like you're putting it in slide view.
Perfect.
Yep, we're good.
Great. Okay. So again, as always, photo credit to Loretta, who took this on tribal lands in California, and all of the photos that are featured here today. Today, what we'll do is have an overview of the council and its charge. We'll then go over the agenda for Friday. We'll go over any updates that have happened in the last month, and then we'll open it up for general listening and discussion. Several of you may have come here today to say something specific to the council or about the work or to inform how we move forward. And so we want to make some space for that if there are any thoughts that folks want to share. And then we'll go through the respectful meeting document, which we're hoping to finalize either this next meeting or over the next several months before we enter into the more meat of this work moving forward. And sorry for the delay. I'm trying to get people in from the waiting room. So we'll go through that document, and really that document is supposed to apply to everybody, and so it's helpful for everybody to have buy-in from the entire community as well. So what is the Truth and Healing Council? The Truth and Healing Council is a council made up of representatives from California Native American tribes that's charged with bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native American narratives to clarify the historical relationship between the state of California and California Native Americans in the spirit of truth and healing. And as Chairman said earlier, it's really about that original, the foundations of the state, which I know it was only a couple of days ago, the state just turned another year old, but it's really about the genocide that happened at the beginnings of the state and how the state can be held accountable for both that those original acts and also what came from those acts that we're still grappling with today. The council will submit a final written report of findings to the governor's office by 2025. The final report should reflect a holistic understanding of the historical
baby.
Should reflect a holistic understanding of the historical relationship between California Native Americans and the state, and may also make recommendations aimed at reparation and restoration and consider how to prevent similar depredations or policies in the future. So first, it should be a framing of what happened here that's inclusive of the Native experience, perspective, and position in that space. And then also it can make recommendations to repair what was lost, repair what was done, or at least attempt to repair those things. The council is organized under a charter and is made up of voting members and non-voting members. And that charter is available on the website as well if folks wanted to take a look at it. There are 12 voting members from each of the 4 regions with 1 seat for a non-federally recognized designee in each region. Each region also has an alternate voting member to ensure quorum for action. Quorum is pretty high just because we wanted to ensure that there was still regional diversity in any action that the council took. And so that's why that we've got also the alternate voting member as well in the event that folks can't make meetings. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation, and participants are encouraged to attend and observe all meetings of the council, submit written statements to the council, make oral statements and testimony to the council, participate in interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, organize and host affiliate events on issues relevant to the work of the council, and join the work of the subcommittees. These last 2 are going to be particularly important because as we move forward into the shifted schedule, which I don't know if I have a slide on today, but we can talk about in a bit. A lot of the work, the foundational work, a lot of the work on the reports and the like will be done through subcommittees. And then where there are organizations that have similar but aligned values, similar but aligned work, those organizations, agencies, other types of mechanisms, for example, we've talked to the feds about potentially working together on whatever they put together for their boarding school initiative. Those initiatives could happen in tandem around these quarterly meetings as well. So we envision this as being kind of a logical convening point where a lot of other things can happen around it so that participants are able to discuss a lot of different things, even if they're not under the jurisdiction or purview of the council. On tribal consultation, if you're a California Native American tribe, we are seeking to begin initial consultation meetings, and we'll be sending a formal request for consultation in the following weeks. Please reach out to our email if your tribe is ready to meet. We're flexible about the method and mode of meetings, and meetings will be recorded and transcribed. Tribes may share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. At this point in time, we're still leaning toward virtual meetings given the uptick in the Delta variant. But if your tribe would like us to have in-person meetings at this time, we can consider it on a case-by-case basis, depending on vaccination status and other measures. So I would say that we would still like to have some initial meetings as folks are available to kind of think about how they want to engage with the council. So we'll be reaching out to set those up as well. And then outside of tribal consultation, the council and the tribal advisor are available to meet with Native American individuals, organizations, and groups at their request. So the council is currently meeting on a monthly basis this year, virtually until further guidance is issued. For the remainder of 2021 or until the council decides otherwise to set up the foundations for the council's work. The next meeting of the full council is this Friday at 1, as I mentioned. And October and November meetings, we have decided to cancel unless there's some strong feelings from the council about this. But this is to allow the subcommittees and staff to finalize contracts, do some internal guiding documents, policies, and procedures, and then also conduct some of those consultations. The agenda for this Friday is as follows here. We'll have a welcome, a roll call, a traditional opening. And as we did last time, if you are a community member or a community leader or a traditional leader who would like to give the traditional opening, please reach out to our staff and you can reach out to Michael to let us know that you'd like to do that. And we'll give you some presenter credentials to be able to do that. We'll then go into council member updates, and that's anything that they've done over the past month that they'd like to update the rest of us on. And then we will go into the subcommittees. So the status and identity subcommittee will be staffed. The education subcommittee will be staffed, and the elders subcommittee will be staffed. So all of these were created in the last council meeting, and they aren't able to do their work until they have subcommittee members. So once those subcommittee members are there, they'll start thinking about how they want to approach the work. And really each subcommittee has a different scope and a different way they are going to do the work, just given how different they are. So for example, the youth council will basically be facilitating a youth component of this council. The elders subcommittee could have a different kind of structure where it's elders informing the work of the council rather than like a mini council like the youth council might be. Education may be more focused on thinking about curriculum and the like, and status and identity will be thinking through those issues and how to apply a lens across all of the work that this group is doing. So that's just my thoughts. That's the committees aren't staffed yet, so the subcommittees can determine how they'll do the work. But that's just an example of how each of them might be different. There's also a deliverables committee that was discussed in the last meeting that will be really focused on thinking through what exactly this council is going to accomplish and how it's going to get there. And then any other committees will be discussed, and then we'll get updates from any of the subcommittees that have been working over the past month. We'll then go through the public engagements and public relations guidelines and process draft, the council member code of ethics draft, the respectful engagement in meetings and listening sessions draft, and then we'll have an overview of the public and community engagement and input that was taken this week, and then talk about next meeting dates and topics. Public comment will start promptly at 3 p.m. And then any items that still need to be done in terms of business, we'll recommend, unless there's something that is really pressing, we'll recommend that those items be taken up in January once we have some time to get more contracts in place and get some of the tools available for the council and the community to think through. This is just a basic timeline so that people can, so that the community can think through everything that we're going to be doing over the next several months, but we'll be working with the council and subcommittees to finalize our third-party contracts and our state contracts to do the work, provide training and tools for the council and the public to participate in this process. And that includes emotional wellness and mental health supports, given that we are going to be delving into some very personal, but also historical and modern trauma that we want to make sure the council is equipped to be able to work through, and that also the community is able to work through as well. And then we'll also be developing a draft strategic planning document, and then any additional policies and procedures that need to be in place before the work gets done next year. We'll also build out subcommittee work and work product and develop communications and web-based materials for a bigger launch in 2022. Then in 2022, subject to COVID-19 constraints, the council will begin its regular quarterly meetings, which again, as I mentioned, are 2-day meetings, 1 day of talking and healing circle, and 1 day that's more testimonial oriented. Those have been planned to be regional. And so we will be wanting to chat with folks about, and with the regions themselves to facilitate listening sessions about what those might look like, given the content of this council. So in a previous listening session, for example, we had a suggestion about an area in Reading where one of the unratified treaties was signed, and that the tribe already does a type of ceremony and a type of commemoration for that. And so it might be something that, or it might be a location where we might want to do something that has some meaning up there, either the listening session or the testimonial. So if there are places like that that have some significance to both the tribal community and then also to this work, we're interested in thinking about those as potential locations for the quarterly meetings. And then finally, updates. So the Academic Partnerships Subcommittee is continuing to develop a mission and vision statement, and they're meeting with the State Library and Archives to assist in scoping the work of the council, and will work with the federal government on resources within federal archives to the extent that they have those resources as well. The Youth Council Subcommittee are planning to host a youth convening kickoff, which is currently in development. And then the Funding Partnerships Subcommittee still needs to meet with our funding partner organization to develop a process for engagement and advise on the development of community funding priorities and current council needs. So that funding committee is really going to be focused on thinking about how to both fund the work currently. So any types of, research, any type of need that the work itself needs, any type of need that the community needs. So for example, if you'd like to attend council meetings, but you don't have childcare during that time, you might be eligible for some sort of grant from the funding partner. But then also we'll be thinking about the long range reparations funding. So for example, to the extent that the council has accountability partners that have directly benefited from the state's early actions, what could they potentially be paying for, or what could they potentially be providing in terms of reparative, restorative needs, actions, and the like for the community. Am I missing anything, Loretta? Is there anything you'd like to add from the subcommittees?
No, not from the subcommittees.
Great.
You're good.
So now I'm going to not share my screen anymore. I'm going to open it up to listening and discussion. So if there's anything that folks wanted to chat about with the group, with the council, anything you came specifically to ask about, this is the time to do it. So we'll give you some time. And then if folks don't have anything that they want to say and they just kind of wanted to hear more about what the council's doing, then we can go into some questions for the public, and then also the respectful engagements document.
And I did want to flag that Councilmember Turner has joined us. So if you want to introduce yourself, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but feel free to do so.
Yes, it's Tishma Turner. I'm the Vice Chair for the Rincon Band of Luisteño Indians. Thank you.
Welcome. And if there's anyone who joined in the interim while we were going through the update, please feel free to introduce yourself to the group as well. As well as any thoughts you might have or anything you'd like to share.
I would like to ask the council, what is their stance on the disenrollment issue?
So the council doesn't have stances, and the council's more of a receiving council. So they haven't created a process for having those kinds of positions. I don't know that they will, but so at this point, they wouldn't be able to speak to that.
So they have no opinion?
That's not what I said. They just don't have a process for having an opinion at this time.
Christina, this is Gary Rickard.
Hi, Gary.
Hi. Can we send to the committee, or just we send it to you, comments in written form?
Absolutely. And you can do that. by sending it to, I'm gonna put the email in the chat, info@catruthandhealing.com.
Okay. And the reason is that I have comments that I want to make, but at this time I need council approval to make them. So I need to get that before I can do that.
Great. So any input you can send to that email. If it's an official correspondence from a California tribe, we'd prefer that you flag it as that too, as a tribal consultation input, so that we can adequately elevate it as well. And we can consider it as a government to government communication.
Thank you.
And then Chad has put in the link, or in the chat, a link to a video program that he produced and wrote that gives information on local California genocide and boarding school history, funded by United Indian Health Services up north. So it's also about them. And an example of what could be produced by Native researchers and educators. So we'll take a look at that, because that seems very helpful. And what I didn't mention is that our funding partner is also going to be partnering with the council on documentary services. And so whether that looks like smaller episodes of something that's the council process, or whether it's a bigger documentary documenting how all of this has gone, they'll be doing that as well. And so I think it would be helpful for them to be able to take a look at that. Given that there are 109 federally recognized tribal nations in California, is there a specific engagement goal that we have? Yes. So we are charged with, my office is charged with consulting with all of the federally recognized tribes and all of the non-federally recognized tribes on the NHC contact list. So that's around 171, I want to say, but I may be off by 1 or 2 tribes. We had planned that in normal times where it's non-COVID. So we do have a budget to be able to travel to those tribes to be able to consult. We are in COVID, so that makes it a bit more challenging, and we'll just have to be more flexible, but we are building out some of our resources to be able to do more hybrid type of conversations, understanding that some of these things and some of these resources are in print. Councilmember Lucas, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
Number one is, how does the committee members be appraised of any letters that might be sent to for comment to the commission? Do we all receive a copy of those letters? Additionally, I would ask in my own situation, if I've received a letter from somebody within the community in reference to their history and concerns, how do I get that to you, or do I pass that on to you? It seems to me that we need to have some kind of a funnel in which we're all aware of everybody's concerns, and that we receive them with as much honesty and integrity as we can. I hesitate responding to somebody who contacts me out of the blue. So my recommendation so far has been that they contact the main office for the Truth and Healing. But I would want to know what everybody's concerns are. So if somebody else is receiving those kinds of letters, I think it's fair that we're all aware of that, particularly since we've been given this duty of truth and healing. I have some other concerns on that. I won't take your time right now, but I do want to bring them to the record today, if I may.
Great. So with most of the input that we get, it is getting logged. And so we are trying to get that information to the council in a consolidated way, but I'll chat with Loretta and with Michael and figure out how we want to do that, because we do want to make sure that you're getting access to all of those comments. And where you're getting direct outreach, we would appreciate you to send it our way as well. We have gotten a couple from individual council members expressing concern and forwarding those letters to us as well. And so to go back to the consultation and the engagement goal, we are trying to engage with all of the tribes, and then also with anyone who would like to engage outside of the context of formal consultation. We're happy to do that as well. Really what we're trying to do in terms of tribal engagement is engage tribes as they feel comfortable and framed based on how they feel like engaging, understanding that this is a joint project of the state, and understanding that when we approach folks as members of state government, that there may be some, there may be a lane that we need to stay in that folks aren't wanting us to go into. So we defer to tribal nations on how they want to engage with us. But ideally, we hear from all of the tribes about how they want their historical narratives, their experiences, their resources to be integrated into this effort. So, for example, one tribe may have an anthropologist that they like and that they want to use as their record. There may be another tribe that says, we hate anthropologists, we don't want that to be our story, and we want to tell you our story ourselves, and that would be how they want to frame their story and their history. Other comments, questions, general feedback at this time?
Hi, Christina.
I want to say Sally, but I also just want to say Vice Chairwoman. So how should I address you?
I know I was Vice Chairwoman for a really long time, huh? No, Sally is fine. Amenihi Hioni Kalaktak, I wanted to introduce myself, and also I had a thought, and it came from, I don't know, some Zoom meeting I was on a little while ago, and I believe it was Minnesota that did this. Their governor actually pulled out some old, really racial derogatory laws that were still on the books, about the treatment of the indigenous people back in the day. And he did a huge public presentation actually denouncing those old laws and taking them off the books. And I just thought that was a really great gesture and could go a long way in healing in California. So it's just a suggestion.
Great, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chad?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your good work, too, with all of this, Council. I had a question in regards to the naming of places. I didn't know if the Council and your staff has seen the Sumaig village on the Yurok tribal ancestral lands is going through that. It's a state park. My brother works there, actually. He's a cultural interpreter. But that was just something that I was thinking, other state parks, the council could be an advocate in connecting Native nations to renaming the places, and then not just state parks, but universities, etc. I was curious if you've had other people talk about that, or if your council has talked about that.
It has been brought up, but I think having that suggestion that be something that the council look at, I think is really helpful as well, for them to be framing their deliverables. And I think that there could be recommendations even outside of state scope, just given that this council will have that, hopefully, kind of buy-in to be suggesting that, you know, lands and geographical locations and the like that are under private ownership may want to be making those changes as well, given that it's a lot easier to do that, at least in theory. So thank you, that's a great suggestion. Additional comments, questions, suggestions? And feel free to add questions in the chat or suggestions, or even introduce yourself in the chat. Okay.
I have a question, Katerina, with the Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery Coalition and Creation Justice Ministries. I was wondering, coming from a variety of faith-based groups, if you have had any faith-based organizations reach out, especially from Christian churches, given the role of the Christian church in colonization and boarding school history, and if there have been any formal kind of attempts to reach out or show support.
We have had a few touch points of outreach that were not on behalf of the actual institutions themselves, but were organizations of people aligned with those institutions. So for example, folks that had worked on, or not worked on, but folks that were looking at the boarding school era and the church's role in that. Folks that were looking at missionization and the church's role in destroying native lifeways. And so we've had a lot of interest in doing aligned work, which I think we would welcome, and you know, not necessarily under the purview of the state, for example, but could be complementary and could help inform some of the recommendations that happen here. So for example, I saw that there was just an article out about the governor and his position or non-position on Father Sarah. And so things like that, where this council could work with other organizations to think through those type of things and what it means for the state and whether those people should be in public state-owned spaces, for example.
Thank you so much. If you have access to that article, I'd love to see it if you could share it in the chat or send later. Thank you.
I'll admit I only read the title, so I want to read it before I actually recommend it.
Sure.
Additional comments, questions? Chad?
I always have lots of questions, but my other question is in regards to the boarding schools that are within California. Has the council had any discussion, or has anyone else brought up, I know like up in Canada, how they are, conducting studies on the cemeteries, and is that going to be discussed through this Truth and Healing, the history of the cemeteries, any of the documentation that may exist? Because I know it's scattered. I have family in several of those places, but is there a discussion on that?
The council itself hasn't discussed it yet, but they could. And in anticipation of that, we've already talked to Interior a bit about working together on this. And so it sounds like Interior is in the process of going through all of their documentation at this time. And their process is supposed to be a lot of research, a lot of documentation or document pulling and figuring out what they have. And that'll happen through the next, I want to say 10 months. And at that point, they'll be at a point where they're in a more public facing way and working more publicly with tribes and Native communities that are impacted. And we reached out to them in the context really to see if we could work together on some of those emotional supports and wellness supports. But I think that as they comb through all of that and understand what they have, we've expressed interest in anything that might impact our work to be something that we could work together on. So for example, it's not just the boarding schools in California that have Native kids from California. You've even got like across borders over in Nevada and other places. Native kids there that never came home. So I think that is entirely, something that could be within the scope of this council, depending on how wide they decide to make their scope. I can't imagine that the state was not complicit in a lot of that. So I think it's something that they could consider.
Yes, I appreciate that answer. I think it would be imperative that like you said, that support system is constructed and designed by California Native people. And then any curriculum development off of that, that needs to hopefully all be designed by our communities. And I would hope that the council would be an advocate for that.
We appreciate that. One thing that our office has been thinking about is as we move forward in these conversations, who are the right people to be facilitating those conversations? And I don't know that that's something we need to completely discuss today, but it would be helpful for us to hear a bit about, because when the Maine Wabanaki Commission came to talk to the council back in December of last year, they mentioned that a lot of the community was actually more comfortable talking to people from outside the community because there wasn't that interrelationship, but also any of the potential things that come with being from the community. So for example, if you know what tribe I come from, you can think about things that I might be, or I might express, or viewpoints I might have based on the history of my tribe and where I come from that may not be true, but also are something that I come with that you then have to think through and break down and dismantle before you can have an honest conversation. And so we've been thinking about, who are the right people to facilitate these conversations, at least in the healing space, given that there might be that, like, we want to reduce lateral violence and lateral trauma. And so it may be that we want to bring someone from outside the community that can look at things objectively or semi-objectively, or maybe not, if there's people that that have been really good at facilitating these kind of discussions without creating more issues, for lack of a better term. Loretta, do you want to add anything on that?
No, I think that is a really good point, that we are interested in hearing ideas about facilitation, and mostly in the healing aspect, because Christine and I recognize that we are not, trained as historical trauma informed and whatnot. And so it's if you have any recommendations, we'd really like to hear that, or if you have any opinions on whether we should have folks from our communities or outside of that would be really helpful to have.
I think also thinking about the place where this type of conversation would happen. I know that I was taught, like in a village system, you had specific places on your ancestral lands where you would go for healing conversations or reciprocity or settling up. conversations, and the architecture even has an impact on how people act. So I think like for Native people, often it becomes very intense when we go into a westernized building. But if you go into a place that looks like a roundhouse, it might not be a roundhouse, but it could have architecture similar to a roundhouse, which is my father's people. It's conducive to better behavior and to being more open and welcoming to facilitate these types of emotional conversations and coming away with something constructive and, hopefully no hard feelings. But knowing that there will be hurt feelings, it's hurtful. These are hurtful conversations. And that's even a westernized concept. The fact that we're trying to not hurt. Of course, we're going to hurt, but that's what ceremony is about, right? And ceremony is reflected in the place and the architecture where we have these conversations. I think that's often a missing piece. But I would, my own personal opinion, I would want our own people to be facilitating this conversation, because that in and of itself, you're building the capacity within our own communities. I know that we have a lot of talented Native social workers, because to me, this is like a social worker conversation type. You have to be trained to facilitate these. And I have a sister who's a social worker. I have a lot of family members who have had these conversations, but I would strongly recommend, I think we have the capacity amongst ourselves as California Native people to, maybe, okay, my mom's on the Yurok side, maybe we would have someone, a neighboring tribe, but someone close to proximity, who could come in and help facilitate. But I would hope that it would be California Native based. The people, you're building up the people capacity and the people power, and that's not an easy thing. Definitely not an easy thing. But anybody who goes into social work is already accepting the fact that this is not going to be an easy position to be in. So if they're Native and they're social workers, they've already made that mental, social, cultural leap. Thank you. I'll stop talking now.
No, we love your suggestions. Please keep talking. One thing I do want to pick the group's brain on is also, we've been hearing a lot about there being space for non-Native folks to engage. And then, even Native people outside of California, Native descent, to engage just in terms of community healing. And so does the conversation change, or does that need to be a different space from something that's, maybe exclusively California Native people, or is that the same space, but with a different facilitator or a different kind of, maybe even just breaking things up a bit to allow for that more open dialogue? Because what we've heard too, as we've had these conversations, is even folks who, maybe they're like 5th generation Californians who are feeling a lot of guilt and shame in this space and want to do more and be better about these issues, but also don't want to do it in a way that feels disrespectful or offensive. And so how do we create space potentially for those partners?
Christina, this is Gary Rickard. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I have, since this is my first time on, I have a couple of questions about the Friday agenda in the meeting. Now, is the Friday meeting for the 35, I believe you said, council members only?
No, so the Friday meeting is open to the public. It's for the 12 council members to do
there's only 12?
Yeah.
I thought I heard you say there was 35 council members.
There's not 35 council members. That's a bit too large to do business, but
okay, so there's 12.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and the meeting's open to everybody. You wouldn't have to wait until 3 o'clock for public comment.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I could be part of the meeting.
Yep. So the agenda typically, because these are meetings that are run under state law and state processes, so what'll happen is each agenda item the council will discuss, and then there'll be an opportunity for public comment on each agenda item. And then if it's not on the agenda, but you'd like to give public comment directly to the council, that starts promptly at 3, and that's kind of an open public comment period.
Right.
So if you wanted to comment
Okay.
on something not on the agenda, then I would show up at 3, just so that, you know, that's when you would comment and you don't have to wait through the rest of the business. If you want to comment on something on the agenda, then I would come and you could comment at the time that it's that it comes up on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Christina.
Yes,
It's Robert.
welcome.
I'm back. Anyway, just a quick educational update. You want to see my ceiling. Basically, school started, yay, with student to teacher, more hybrid most of the time, but that's a plus. And then also, I noticed in the chat, Lucia, I'm probably pronouncing the name wrong. That's the teacher in me. Commented about ethnic studies. Myself, well, no, let me get back. My name is Robert Levi. I'm a tribal member at the Torres Martinez Band of Kui Indians. I'm also past chair of the California Teachers Association, American Indian Alaska Native Caucus. I also sit on the board of Malka Museum's publishing company. I'm associated with UCR NAGPRA. What else am I into? I'm developing the curriculum for Ethnic Studies 101, or Ethnic Studies curriculum for American Indian, and my wife for American Indian Studies I just woke up, to be honest. It was a rough weekend with my grandkids. Working with high school, developing curriculum for ethnic studies. My wife is also Miwok from California, but she's doing the 4th and 5th grade elementary portion, and we are still looking for a junior high middle school person. And like I mentioned before, with this council listening session, is that I'm trying to develop a comic book Indian superhero presentation for the junior highs and middle school persons. So still working on that. Also, I guess, you know, education, we are the healers. We know what has happened to us in the past. We're trying to make that more prevalent in terms of Assemblymember Ramos's Bill 1553, which puts more of an emphasis on California Indian history. We're also developing curriculum for that. So again, what are we doing? The Ethnic Studies Minority I can't remember what it is, Coalition. We're part of that, rewriting that curriculum for the state. Assemblymember Ramos is on the here I go, I forgot. I always forget the name of the commission. Educational. Anyway, they're the ones that check and make sure the curriculum is up to date and is fact checked. He's just got appointed on that commission by the state assembly. My wife, who's working through the California Teachers Association, hopefully will also get the liaison position for that commission. So again, we have about 3 good friends, quote unquote, on the commission to help us develop our curriculum. Also with Assembly Ramos, you know, we mentioned that AB 1553, he also started, I'm looking at I was jotting down my notes real fast. The AB 873, foster children on the reservation, American Indian foster children reservation. Also AB, I can't even remember writing. I told you I just woke up. 945, I think, is the regalia at high school. They have that now, so Indian students can wear regalia at their graduations. Again, we mentioned, ethnic studies, the 101, was just passed, and it looks good on paper, but again, it needs more developing in terms of the Native American curriculum, and again, that's what we're trying to do. So that's also in transit. The Father Sarah statue, was that AB 338, I think. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, so he's working on it. Most of these bills are on the governor's desks, And again, Christina, I don't know, you probably know more of the bills. I was looking them up frantically, but those are the ones I come across on Assemblymember Ramos's webpage. But there's a lot more. I mean, I was looking at it earlier, like last week, and he's really doing a bang up job for us. So I can't thank him enough. I can't help my fellow California Indians in terms of helping us get that curriculum done. Brownie Nadeau out of Chico State, Melissa Moreno out of Woodlands Community College. We've also been working hard in terms of getting our California Indian voice into the curriculum, and we hope to continue to do so. And again, like I said before, education is the healing process. And again, you know, Christina, you've heard it before. You can't tell Indian history or California history without telling California Indian history. And again, that's what we hope to do: get the support of the council, or just let them know what we're doing, and then see what they could do for us, and vice versa. So that's the update for education so far. If I find anything else, I'm scrambling through my notes, I will let you guys know. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it as always. Other comments, questions, thoughts at this time?
On your question about, the space to include others, I think it would be beneficial and good if just in the beginning you allowed the space for the Native Americans, so then they can, kind of, begin the healing and everything collectively together as united Native people in the state of California, because it may be emotional and stuff, and some, may hold back if there's outsiders in there, and then maybe have a nearby space for those that want to be there in support of the Native people and stuff. And then slowly, after a few things, you can mesh them together and stuff. But I think in the beginning, not to ostracize anybody or anything, but to allow that healing, in a sacred manner amongst the people first, because Native people, they'll be wondering why now. And, we go through that all the time, and I believe in breaking down barriers and stuff. And there are sincere people that want healing to happen, and it needs to happen in order for us to all get along and come together as a collective people, the human people, to be able to get things going and, get the past and leave the past in the past, but somehow still see it and know it's there, but work forward into a better, place for all people. You've got to allow that healing just amongst the people first, and then once you're healed, because if you're not all the way strong, and that there's a potential that you'll be weak and shut down and all that. So I think it'd be good if there was two spaces, and then eventually somehow join it and make one complete space.
Thank you, Chairman. Really appreciate that input. And I'm wondering if it might be of value to have a space for non-California Native folks to both get some education, but then also get some training in how to be good allies and cultural humility, so that when those spaces meld, it's less bumpy.
Yeah, that sounds good, because, as it is, even our culture and our identities and stuff, stereotypical things, it's like California people are still losing their identities due to powwows and all this stuff. And so many people, when they finally see California dancing or hear our language and stuff, they're like, whoa, that's, and so even to, have a space for out of the area natives would be great, and keep that separate from California, but still respect and honor that they want to, be there and learn, because you still can be on travel and hear, oh, I didn't know there was California Indian people left. I thought they were all, it's like, no, we are still here,
Great, thank you, Chairman. Additional thoughts, comments? Feedback? or anything you think that the council should specifically be focusing on. I think part of what the council may do is start listening and have it be on a regional basis. And so once it starts its regular meetings, have the healing space, have the testimonial for the region that will be in March. And again, those meetings are quarterly: March, June, September, and December starting next year. And then think about what comes up in those meetings as also kind of figuring out what people are focused on and what are the major key points in those histories that need to be focused on. Additional comments, questions, thoughts? Chad?
I'm curious, how is the council prioritizing, the potential courses of action or the potential listing of actions that they're that after all of this, the listening sessions and all of the data and stories that, our people are sharing with the council, what are they, that's going to be such a massive undertaking. How are they going to prioritize, the top 10 action items or the top 20, potential courses or pathways of action?
So I think that's going to be something that the deliverables subcommittee is going to have to think through about how they're going to prioritize, because you could do it any number of ways. And I think part of it will come out of what are the things that they are recommending. And so if one of the recommendations is something that it's going to, let's say it costs $5 jillion and it'll take 100 years to accomplish, that's something that probably will go lower on the list, but it could go higher depending on how they decide to prioritize. Yeah, I guess that's a long answer to say that they haven't thought through that yet, but that will be very important. And especially with work like this, where you have to be careful of the people who are making the change and whether they view it as there's a group of people who are in policymaking and in the ability, or who have the ability to make change, who once they make one change feel like that's it and they did it. And so I think thinking through that and thinking about what is the most impactful for the Native community to change, like earlier, is going to be important for that group to think through. And I don't know if I said that in a way that makes sense to folks, because I'm happy to explain more.
Sure, I understand it. And what about for youth, for our Native youth, who often, in westernized society, a lot of youth become apathetic because they don't feel like they're involved in the process or in the prioritization of action. So for us to not follow that colonized pattern, how will the council potentially carve out a youth-oriented set of priorities that's designed by them, that's brought up by them, guided by them? What are the thoughts or plans on that?
We're hopeful that the Youth Council will do that. And so we're going to have, as I mentioned, a bigger convening to get youth interest and also figure out how youth want their council to look, whether it looks something like this or whether it looks like something different, given that they think differently from any of us here, unless you are a youth, welcome. But the idea for the Youth Council is that they will have also their own priorities based on how they view things and how they view that history and its impact on them specifically. And those can hopefully be plugged into this work as well. Additional comments? Councilmember Lucas? You're on mute, Councilmember.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah, I just want to get back to what I hope would be a focus. Number one, I had a conversation with one of the elders this weekend that was 98 years old, trying to encourage her to write her own history. I recognize we all have a different history, individual history, whether it's a reservation, whether it's non-federally recognized, or whether or not it's just an individual. I think all those stories are terribly important. And what I understood that one of the things we want to do in the truth and healing process is to correct the historic record. So again, you're going to hear me really stress on this as time comes by, because I really do believe this is terribly important. So I know we have a lot of young folks on this screen today. I don't know who might be out there that isn't letting themselves be known, but I would put a plea out that everybody contact your elders and everybody encourage them to write their own stories. The lady I talked to did not have a reservation, but she had access to an old grandmother who told her a lot of stories, yet she doesn't feel that those stories have value because she had no reservation to go to. So my question is, does the reservation make an Indian, or does the Indian make a reservation? So we have a lot of questions that we have to ask ourselves. But one of the things I've learned over the years, if you can write your story as honestly as you possibly can, some of it is very rewarding, some of it is very painful, but it's important that it become part of the record. My hope would be that in restoration, we could have 4 museum archives that are dedicated to the California Native Americans, that we all hold the identical information. And the reason for that is if we have an earthquake in Sacramento, that material is still available in Southern California. I would encourage our youth to start taking an interest in our archives. Go to Laguna Niguel or wherever that archive is now and just look at the records of the letters that are handwritten by folks that have passed on that are saying, please stop the fiestas, there's too much drinking, or somebody's cow ate up my garden. That's incredible sociology for the community. But it also stresses that, yes, your story has value, whether you believe it or not, it has value. And I think we really need to encourage that folks write their own stories. Other people might put a dirty tongue to it and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Doesn't make any difference. It's your truth. That truth has to come to the record. So that's my plea for the day. Okay.
Thank you, Council Member. And one of the things, just to tee off of that we made sure to include in the budget was transcription services. So even where folks aren't necessarily thinking about putting pen to paper, if there is an elder in your community that wants to share their story, you can either record it and send it to us for inclusion and we can have it transcribed so that it's part of this work, or we can come and record those stories as well, whatever is the preference for your community. Because that's kind of the goal here, is making sure where there is that deep knowledge and personal knowledge that we're capturing those narratives where, and those experiences where people want them to be included. Additional comments, questions, feedback? Loretta?
There is you immediately saw that unmuted, but there is a comment in the chat asking about consultation guidelines and whether the council will set those forward.
I mean, consultation will be done according to how we do it in our office. So it's government to government and not necessarily under the purview of the council, because it's government to government. Where there are basic minimum requirements for transparency, we can have that conversation with the council. But I think part of this is that each tribe has different preferences about the types of conversations and the methods and modes of how they want consultation done. So I don't think that we would put that in front of the council to dictate how that happens, since it is a tribe by tribe and a government to government conversation.
And then just to clarify with the consultations too, in this context, they are, for lack of better words, a bit different because they will be recorded and transcribed. So it is what the tribe is comfortable with sharing with us, because as a state entity, it's public information. And so I think moving forward with that and just being transparent about the public status of the information is our goal, and making people feel comfortable enough to share or not. It's definitely up to each nation, the extent that they would like to share during those consultations.
Exactly, and I apologize, there's some very loud music next to me if you can hear it. But, part of this is we want to create a space that's not extractive. And so we don't want tribes sharing things with the state that they wouldn't necessarily want other people to know. This is supposed to be a public facing reorientation of the history of California. And so where there are things that are private to the tribe that they don't want to be a part of a public record or publicly accessible by just anybody, we want them to be aware that those are things they might not want to share with us in the context of these conversations. Go ahead, council member.
Oh, okay. Am I on? You can hear me now? Okay. Sorry, I'm not used to technology, but I wanted to know, I know you've mentioned it a number of times that you were going to have conversations with the tribes. Has that started? And if so, how many, or do we get any feedback on what type of conversations we've had?
Haven't started yet. Those consultation requests will go out soon, and those are a letter that go out to each of the tribes requesting a one-on-one meeting. As I mentioned, because it's government to government, it'll depend on what they're comfortable sharing and how we have those conversations, how that feedback gets plugged into the council's work itself. But I imagine that a lot of it will be something that we can share publicly, even if it's not identifiable to a specific tribe. So we try to be respectful of also that, what am I trying to say, Loretta? Data sovereignty. Sorry, my brain got stuck because it's a Monday also. But we do want to be mindful of the fact that some tribes may not want specific identifiable information shared generally. So as we have those conversations, the council will be informed to the extent that the tribes are comfortable with that. Additional comments, questions, feedback. We've got about 7 minutes, and I can put some additional questions that we have in the chat.
I think one thing that might be helpful for us to hear feedback on is this month we've changed our listening sessions, meaning that we have this one in the afternoon, and then we're going to have an evening session on Wednesday. Obviously, this time works for you all, so thank you for joining us. But if you have specific feedback on times, whether it's a weekend or evening sessions, we'd definitely love to hear that and open to getting as much feedback and community participation as possible.
And then I just posted in the chat other questions we're thinking about. So are there additional resources the council should be building out? Are there policies, procedures, processes that you think that the council should be thinking about before the bigger work gets done? Are there emotional health tools and supports you recommend for the community? Are there resources you'd like to see on the website? For example, would you like to see cultural humility resources for non-California Native people? How should the council modify its work if public health conditions make it difficult to gather in person? Should we be building out timelines? Should we be thinking about different hybrid structures, different structures of engagement? So interested to hear more about all of that as well if folks have feedback.
Christina, this is Gary Rickard again.
Gary.
This is for Robert. He was very interested in, and so was some other people, in rewriting the history. I think that maybe we need to look at the Shasta County's rewriting of the history as a model for the schools. The superintendent of schools here, Judy Flores, we've been working on this about 3 years, and we started with the first year and a half of talking with all Native people. That was pretty much it, and gathering the stories and gathering the history from the old people. And we have finished writing grade levels, 7 and 8, and we're working on 4 through 6. And one of the reasons we went with the younger is because, you know, they did not have any received or any information that was probably better to receive at this younger age than starting with high school or above. And we already received a commendation from the State Department of Ed as to the process that we've used and how we've gathered the information and how the curriculum has been written. So when we come to education, it would be probably nice to have Judy Flores, as Supreme School speak, or, you know, those of us that have worked on the program as to how we've done that. And when we talk about that, I think we've decided it's been best to do your county, you know, because then you have your county superintendent of schools involved, and you're writing the history of your local history, you know. And it's been a very rewarding endeavor, and we will continue working on the other grades. But I believe would be a model for anyone looking at doing their history. And Jack, he's worked on it also. So Mr. Potter, Chairman Potter, and so he knows some about it. We really included the Native people in doing this. That's all.
Thank you. Robert, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Gary and everybody's working on that Shasta County. My suggestion would be if they run the curriculum through the California Teachers Association, their curriculum development committee. If you get their endorsement, there's nothing that can stop any school board in your county or across the state from saying it's not valid, because the teachers validated it. It's not the superintendents or anything, but it comes from the teachers. And again, that's where we found a snag in, is that our bill language was not up to par with what CTA thought would be a better idea. So that's what held us up for about 3 months. But we're working through the language, and I think our language is done with them. But again, thank you for that input. We've modeled our curriculum after Washington State's curriculum from time immemorial. And also we looked at Wisconsin and Minnesota's, and I think North and South Dakota's. So it was just something to where we wanted to start. My wife has already taken the 4th grade mission curriculum and dumped the missions and said, you know, you gotta be kidding me. So she has already had developed, I think, 2 or 3 curriculum guidelines to what students can do instead of that stupid mission program. She's also teaching 5th grade this year, which is Manifest Destiny. So she's working on a curriculum for that. 3rd grade, I believe, is the places where you live. And so that walks right into local tribes. So again, if your curriculum centers around 3rd grade in terms of where they are, that'd be great. 4th grade, again, the California Indian history, make sure none of your teachers are teaching that mission stuff. We're having a hard time down here in Southern California, since this is mission territory. We're having a hard time getting some of the districts to get rid of that. Oh, also what came up was the gold mining days. I think there's in the 4th grade or 5th grade, there's a gold mining day, or that we're trying to get rid of too, also because it glorifies the intrusion of the gold miners in 1849. And then there's something else that she was talking about. I try to pay attention to my wife, really I do. So again, that's where they're sitting in terms of the elementary. High school, it's just like I said, we're trying to develop citizenship. The Indian Citizenship Act was where I'm working at, and then also that comic book situation. But again, thank you so much. Well, if I'll put my email in the chat, if you could send me a copy of that, that would be great, because if you do give it to CTA, my wife is the chairman of the American Indian Alaska Native Caucus for the Teachers Association. So if the caucus backs that up, I think you'll have a more stronger curriculum in terms of getting it out to public schools. And like I put into the chat, is that we're just using a base, a formation, a template, and then again, whatever is local within the region, that's what you can ask the tribes to say, or the elders in the tribe to say, this is what we feel comfortable telling the public. And guaranteed, you can tell them anything about California Indians, and they'll be surprised that we are still around. That's how scary it is out there in the public schools. So again, thank you again, Gary, and then I'll lend it back to you, Christina, and I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Robert. We always appreciate it. So we are a bit past time, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up unless anyone has any final thoughts.
I just wanted to flag a link in the chat. If you feel more comfortable submitting comments anonymously, we have a Google form. So go ahead and feel free to utilize that as well.
And Councilmember Lucas, did you want to say anything to close?
Okay, now I'm on. Okay, yeah, just again, keep these up. I am concerned that you said there's not going to be any meetings in November and December, if I heard that correctly. If I can say so, I always think that's a mistake. We only meet once a month, and when it's not part of your constant routine for whatever reason, you finally lose interest, and I'd hate to see that happen. That's just a observation over 86 years of living, so whatever that's worth. But I would again make a plea to all those folks. You have a history. Please let us bring it together. And even the ugly stuff, we only learn if we talk about it, and we can't heal ourselves unless we talk about it. We gotta get it out, and we have to share that, because you're not alone on that. That's my thinking. So thank you.
You, Councilmember.
Everybody stay safe and continue healing. We're all in this predicament in these modern times due to, like I said, the earliest form of government in the state of California. Had California been treated fairly and done right, with the treaty negotiators coming through, the land set aside, there wouldn't be all the issues that face a modern day tribal communities. There wouldn't be these fractionated tribal groups or anything. We would have been our tribal nations. And so we all have to heal from that, and we're trying the best way we can. And so I'm grateful for this forum, and collectively, as long as we heal together and move forward together, we're going to be all right.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all, and we'll see you Wednesday night if you join us then. Take care.